Gonzaga is set to host top 25 prospect Kingston Flemings for Kraziness in the Kennel, another guard in the 2025 class getting interest from Mark Few and the Zags.
You are Locked On Zags, your daily podcast on the Gonzaga Bulldogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, y'all? Happy Thursday. Welcome into the Locked On Zags podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am your host and longtime Gonzaga podcaster, Andy Patton, here to bring you news and updates on all things Zag athletics. Today's episode of Locked On Zags is brought to you by FanDuel. Folks, make every moment more. As the playoffs are winding down, the sports stop sporting like we want them to, but this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus every single day. That's right, there's something for everyone every day all summer long, so visit FanDuel.com to get started. Well, folks, we're going to meet 2025 guard Kingston Flemings and discuss what this means for Gonzaga's other 2025 targets. Is the Gonzaga pursuing another guard a bad sign for Isiah Harwell? What about Jalen Harrelson, Julius Halifanoa, Nick Kamenia? We're going to get into that. And then we're going to close out the show with an Olympic update. Team USA scrimmage Serbia. Filip Petrusev looked pretty darn good. We're going to talk about that. Anton Watson's great game for the Boston Celtics. Julian Strawther getting shut down by the Denver Nuggets. What it all means for those guys as they pursue the NBA this upcoming season. Get into that to close out the show. But we start with the big headline. For those of you who are in our Discord channel, by the way, if you're not in the Discord channel, go ahead and join. It's free. There's a link in the show notes. Click the link. You're joined. You're in. That's it. We're talking Zags 24/7. There's a running joke in the Discord channel that I frequently record shows right before big things happen. And I was planning to record on Wednesday evening, ultimately decided because of various other factors, including having a 4-month-old, that I would rather record on Thursday morning. Very glad that I did, because about an hour before I hit the record button, we saw the update from Tobias Bass at The Athletic, friend of the podcast, friend of myself. He made the update that Kingston Flemings will visit Gonzaga in October for Kraziness in the Kennel. So we push the planned episode for Thursday to Friday. We end up getting a chance to talk about this today. So very happy that that actually went my way for the first time in a while, as usually I will have just wrapped up recording when we get an update about something in that regard. Gonzaga loves hosting players for Kraziness in the Kennel. This is not new. Last year, they hosted Nick Kamenia on an official visit. The year before that, they also hosted Nick Kamenia, although that was on an unofficial visit at that time. We're going to talk more about Nick Kamenia a little bit later in the show, but not a surprise to see Gonzaga bring somebody in for Kraziness. I'd been wondering, and I'm still wondering, if Jalen Harrelson, who is a top 10 prospect in the 2025 class who Gonzaga has been connected to, Gonzaga is in his top 9. He's scheduled visits with the majority of every other program in his top 9. It's mostly schools in that area. I had been wondering if Harrelson in the Big Ten area, he's from Michigan, or he's from Indiana, so Indiana, Michigan, Purdue, etc. I'd been wondering if he was going to try to come out for Kraziness in the Kennel. Maybe that was the plan, and it fell through, and now they're thinking, okay, we're going to find somebody else to bring in for Kraziness. The player they're bringing in, Kingston Flemings. Kingston Flemings is being targeted by a ton of schools in Texas, which makes sense. He's a 6'3" point guard from San Antonio, Texas. He has an official visit lined up at Texas on September 6th through the 8th. He has an official visit lined up the weekend prior to that at Houston. That'll be over Labor Day weekend. And then he has already taken an official visit to Texas Tech. So official done at Texas Tech, official set for Texas, official set for Houston. Now he's going to come out to Gonzaga for Kraziness in the Kennel in mid-October, or I guess early October. He has offers from a litany of excellent schools that are not just based in the state of Texas. He has an offer from Kansas. He has an offer from Texas A&M and SMU and Baylor and TCU. So to be clear, still a lot of offers in the state of Texas. But outside of the Texas schools in Kansas, we also have Tennessee, Oklahoma, Michigan, Utah, Alabama, and LSU. Excellent group of schools in pursuit of Kingston Flemings. Again, a 6'3" point guard from San Antonio, Texas. He is the 21st ranked player in the 2025 recruiting class, according to 24/7 Sports' 24/7 Sports composite rankings. On3 is the highest of the 4 major recruiting services on Kingston Flemings. They have him 12th in the 2025 class. 24/7 Sports has him 22nd. ESPN has him 23rd, and Rivals has him 27th. So he's a consensus top 30 prospect, almost a consensus top 25 prospect. He is on threes, kind of the outlier, a little bit higher on him than the rest, but regardless, he is considered a very good prospect, a 4-star recruit in this class. He is below Isiah Harwell, who's consistently showing up in the early teens, the 10 to 15 range. We've seen a little higher at some places. He is behind Jalen Harrelson, who we've seen up as high as 6, 7, 8 in that range. But he is higher than Davis Vogel, who's in the late 30s at this point. The rankings are still very kind of spread out on where Davis Vogel lands. Nick Kamini is pretty consistently in the early 30s in the rankings. So Kingston Flemings is a little farther behind the two elite guards that Gonzaga has been connected to, but he's a little higher up than the other players Gonzaga has been connected to and landed in the case of Davis Vogel. So I think that gives a good barometer for kind of how he's being evaluated in that class heading into his senior season of high school. He also had a write-up written about him on 24/7 Sports' website. This was written up by Brandon Jenkins. I'm not going to read the entire write-up. Definitely check out the link. Just go to his 24/7 Sports page. You can see the write-up there. But I'm going to mention a few highlights and see if you can maybe see who this sounds like when looking at the description of this player. Here are some of the highlights from Brandon Jennings' scouting report of Kingston Flemings at 24/7 Sports. True lead guard with a great feel for the game. Plays at a high tempo and excels at throw-ahead passes with elite vision. Controls game with change of speeds. Puts pressure on the rim, plays very unselfish. Has a knack for drive, draw, and kick. Needs to develop more as a shooter. Long-term tools, great athleticism, and feel with a team-first mindset. Best upside of any lead guard prospect in the class. Folks, if this doesn't sound like it could be written about either of Andrew or Ryan Nembhard, I don't know what does. That is a dead ringer for those two guys. Excels at throw-ahead passes, elite vision, plays at a high tempo, needs to develop more as a shooter. Long-term, excellent upside. That is literally Andrew and Ryan Nembhard to a T. For the record, that's also basically what Braden Smith has been in his career at Colgate and why Gonzaga brought him in to spend a year learning from Ryan Nembhard so that he can step into that role in the 2025-26 season and effectively be Nembhard 3.0 for Gonzaga after they had Andrew and then Ryan and then now Braden Smith, who will take over that team in 2025-26. Now, if we assume Braden Smith is effectively another Nembhard, and we now are reading this scouting report and getting serious flashes of Ryan and Andrew Nembhard from Kingston Flemings, the question becomes, why is Gonzaga turning their attention towards a pure pass-first point guard whose greatest strengths right now are in terms of tempo and speed and ball distribution skills, and his weaknesses are in outside shooting, if that's kind of the archetype of a player we already have on the 25-26 roster? And I think a simple reminder would be this. Gonzaga loves playing 2-point guards. That's what they love to do. That's what Mark Few wants to do. That's what his two best teams, his two teams that have come within 40 minutes of winning a national championship, those two teams both started 2 guards. One of them started at Nembhard. That was, of course, the Jalen Suggs 2021 team that lost to Baylor. Jalen Suggs and Andrew Nembhard started together. Joel Ayayi was the third starter. So they basically started 3 guards, 2 of them who were point guards. In 2016-17, they started Josh Perkins and Nigel Williams-Goss. They were both pretty clearly point guards. Third starter there was Jordan Matthews, who was kind of mostly a shooting guard who was kind of playing the small forward position, much like Joel Ayayi. So Gonzaga's pursuit here of Kingston Flemings, it could mean a lot of different things, and we'll get more into that in the second segment, but the idea that, oh, well, he's a point guard, much like Braden Smith, and they already brought Braden Smith in to start to take over for Ryan Nembhard, that doesn't mean that they're not identifying these two guys as players who could potentially start alongside each other, potentially with Dusty Stromer starting at the 3. Davis Vogel will certainly be in the mix there as well. I don't think that there is a reason to be alarmed that Flemings is a point guard and that Braden Smith is already on the roster, because we know that Mark Few has no problem and in fact prefers to play 2 point guards together. Having said all of that, Gonzaga's pursuit of another guard in the 2025 class probably doesn't mean nothing about Isiah Harwell. It doesn't mean nothing about Jalen Harrelson. We're going to talk about that. We just talked about Harwell on Wednesday's show, but this is an alteration to part of that conversation. So we're going to have that coming up in just a second. But first, I want to tell you all about today's sponsor, FanDuel. I love sports. You love sports. We all love sports. And I never, ever want them to stop. I don't ever want there to be a slow season. But folks, we're there. NBA's done. NHL's done. MLB's in the All-Star break. WNBA's still going. Olympics are coming up. But that is about it right now. And when the sports aren't sporting the way we want them to, thankfully, FanDuel lets me keep them going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus every single day. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. And if you want to support Coach Mark Few and watch the Olympics with a vested interest, currently Team USA is minus 470 odds to take home the gold. Or if you're a believer in the country up north, Kelly Olynyk, Andrew Nembhard, you are feeling Team Canada pulling off the stunner and taking down Team USA for a gold medal. Their odds are currently at plus 1,100. France is third at plus 1,300 right now. So head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. All right, folks, segment 2, still Andy Patton, still Locked On Zags podcast, and we are still talking Kingston Flemings, a top 25 prospect in the 2025 recruiting class, a 6'3" point guard from San Antonio. We're going to talk a little bit about what he would mean for Gonzaga, what that might look like lineup roster construction wise. Then we'll get into what this means for Isiah Harwell, for Jalen Harrelson, some of the other players Gonzaga is pursuing in that 2025 recruiting class. So again, we touched on some of it already at the end of that segment. It's another young guard to add in the mix for the 25-26 season. 4 of Gonzaga's 5 projected starters next year are out the door this upcoming season. We know that Ryan Nembhard's gone. Nolan Hickman's gone. Michael Ajayi's gone. Ben Gregg's gone. Caleb Battle's gone. Those guys are all done. They're not coming back. We don't know if Graham Ike is going to return. We don't know if Steele Venters is going to return. Both those guys technically have the eligibility return, but they'd be in their 6th years of college basketball. Do they want to continue to be in college at that point? We don't know. So the expectation right now is that in the 25-26 season, Gonzaga will have Braden Smith, presumably the starting point guard. They will have Emmanuel Inocente, who's not going to play much this year, most likely, but who was productive at Tarleton State as a freshman last year. They're going to have Dusty Stromer. We're assuming he's coming back. There's no reason not to. They're going to have Davis Fogel, 6'7" freshman in that 25 class. He's an incoming rising senior in high school right now from Anacortes, committed to Gonzaga a couple weeks ago. Those guys are locked in. Smith, Inocente, Stromer, Fogel, locked in right now. Steele Venters could come back as well. 5 guys right there, and it's 5 guys for effectively 3 spots because both Venters and Stromer can play the 3. Smith is obviously going to play the 1. Fogel's kind of a 2-3 hybrid. Maybe could play a little on ball as well. Inocente looks like a 2-3 hybrid as well. So you got guys who are kind of versatile positionally who are all in the mix for those 1, 2, and 3 spots for Gonzaga in 25-26. You also have 2 players being pursued in the 2025 recruiting class outside of Kingston Fleming in Isiah Harwell and Jalen Harrelson, who we will talk about momentarily. Plus, you factor in what the front court is going to look like. You're going to have Braden Huff. You're going to have Ismaila Diani. You're going to potentially have Graham Ike. That's the huge hinge, is whether Ike is coming back or not. And you're potentially going to have Junsuk Yo as well. So you could be looking at a lineup. I'm going to assume Venters comes back. Graham Ike does not. This is not based on anything other than my feeling about what those 2 guys are going to do a long time from now. That would put you in a lineup of something like Braden Smith, Braden Huff, Ismaila Diani, Steele Venters, Dusty Stromer, Braden Smith, with Davis Fogel, Emmanuel Inocente, potentially Junsuk Yo coming off the bench in that situation. Again, if Fleming comes to Gonzaga, you could start 2 point guards. You could start Smith at the 1. You could start Fleming at the 2. You could start Stromer at the 3. If Venters is not coming back, I think that works pretty seamlessly for Gonzaga in that lineup. So that's kind of where I think that would potentially line up for Gonzaga in 2025-26. But what does it mean for Isiah Harwell? Harwell, again, we talked about him on Wednesday's show, 6'6", 2 guard, a little bit of a 2-3 hybrid, so not the same position as Fleming's, which I think the immediate reaction is, well, they're not the same position, so I don't know that it means much. But again, Mark Few likes starting 2 guards, and if he's identifying Flemings as a player who can come in and contribute right away in the backcourt for Gonzaga in 25-26, there's only so many of those players that you can add to a roster. You already have Braden Smith, who's not obviously a freshman, but is going to be playing his first year at Gonzaga that year. You already have Davis Fogel. You already have Emmanuel Inocente, who, again, will have played this last year, but probably pretty sparingly. How many more young guards can you add to a roster? How many more spots do you even have? They have open spots, for the record. They could easily add Flemings and Harwell to the roster. But it's hard to not look at this as at least Gonzaga hedging their bet here on Harwell. Again, a reminder, Isiah Harwell is planning to make his announcement on September 12th, a full 4 weeks really, before Kraziness in the Kennel. So Kingston Flemings is planning to come to campus a month after Isiah Harwell makes his announcement. If Harwell announces he's coming to Gonzaga, if they manage to pull this off, maybe Flemings backs out of coming to campus, in which case that's fine. I think most Gonzaga fans and probably the Gonzaga staff would rather have Isiah Harwell than Kingston Flemings. Again, they're not the same position, and it's not necessarily one or the other, but it's kind of starting to feel like it's one or the other, just from a roster construction standpoint. 3 freshman guards in Fogel, Harwell, and Kingston Flemings, along with, at that time, I guess it'd be a junior in Dusty Stromer and a junior in Emmanuel Inocente, but still those 2 guys back. Braden Smith's got 2 years of eligibility. That's a lot of guards in one room. And I think you have to expect, if you're Gonzaga, that Harwell committing to your program probably takes you out of the running for Kingston Flemings. For the record, I also don't know how likely it is that Kingston Flemings is going to come to Gonzaga. We talked about this on the Harwell episode on Wednesday. You kind of want to be the last team somebody visits, and he's already visited Texas Tech. He's scheduled with Houston and Texas before he visits Gonzaga. So maybe that's a good sign. Maybe Gonzaga's in a good spot to say, hey, you visited all the Texas schools. If none of them are grabbing your interest and you want to just do something different, you want to follow the path of Dimitri Goodson or Drew Timme or insert multiple other players who have come from Texas to Spokane, you can do that. And here's the blueprint. Here's why we love you. Here's why we think you'd be a great fit here. That could totally work, especially if Harwell doesn't commit to Gonzaga. I do think that it's probably going to be one or the other there. And I think that we've mentioned this a handful of times. Jalen Harrelson's very unlikely to come to Gonzaga. He's still somebody that Gonzaga has pursued. He listed Gonzaga in his top 9, but he has effectively visited or planning to visit every other program on his top 9 except for Gonzaga. He's from Indiana. He's expected to. Indiana is one of the top programs on his list. So is Notre Dame. So is Purdue. Auburn's on there. Michigan State's on there. Those all feel like kind of the likely landing spots for Jalen Harrelson. So I wouldn't expect, this doesn't really mean anything for Jalen Harrelson because he wasn't likely coming to campus anyway. But it does feel like Gonzaga is, again, at minimum, hedging their bet by bringing in Flemings to campus to keep an option open to add another guard in the 2025 class if Isiah Harwell ultimately picks Houston or Texas or Cal instead of picking Gonzaga when he makes his commitment on September 12th. A couple other players the Zags are pursuing. We talked about Julius Halafanoa on Wednesday's show as well. 7-foot big man. Feels like he's likely going to either Virginia Tech or Xavier. Not really. This pursuit of Kingston Flemings doesn't really have anything to do with Julius Halafanoa. Just wanted to toss him out there as another name that's in that 25 class. Nick Kamenia, of course, is the other big name. We've heard a lot about Nick Kamenia. Again, he was first on campus for Kraziness in the Kennel, not last year, but the year before that. So he has been on the Gonzaga radar for multiple years now. 6'8", small ball 4 type, rocketed up the rankings, top 30 at both On3 and 24/7 Sports, 31st at ESPN. On3 still has Gonzaga as the heavy favorites. They have like a 65% chance of coming to Gonzaga. No other school's above 2%. I've mentioned numerous times to take the On3 predictive rankings with a grain of salt. You're trying to predict what you think a 16, 17-year-old kid is going to do. That's just really tough to do. But it's worth acknowledging that while the fan base and the people who kind of follow this team on a daily basis are feeling less confident in Gonzaga's pursuit of Nick Kamenia, and every day that goes by is less and less confidence, there's still people who do this for a living who are feeling pretty confident that Nick Kamenia is going to commit to Gonzaga. So we will see what happens there. Power forward feels like the weakest spot on Gonzaga's roster after this upcoming season. Diani and Braden Huff feel like both centers. You're losing Ben Gregg and Michael Ajayi. They're both out of eligibility after this upcoming season. Steel Ventures is kind of small to play the 4. Jun-Suk Yo hasn't proven himself yet, although he's kind of the most traditional 4 that would be on the roster. If Gonzaga lands Nick Kamenia and he slots right into that power forward spot alongside Braden Huff at the center, that is great. He's a really nice fit for this roster. Would rather have Nick Kamenia than Kingston Flemings just because of positional need for Gonzaga. but certainly a player to keep an eye on. I think we're feeling like, USC's in the mix now, UCLA's in the mix, and the other big programs are in the mix. Gonzaga's not going to land Nick Commedia. That may be true. Of course. But I think there's still a really compelling reason for Mark Few and the Zags to be prioritizing Commedia in a major way. And if they can continue to do so and convince him to come to Spokane, hey, we were the school that was in on you for when you were a freshman in high school, that could be a really huge win to cap off the summer for Mark Few and the Zags on the recruiting trail. But we're going to close out the show talking about Filip Petrusev. He outperformed Nikola Jokic in Serbia's scrimmage against Team USA. Could a nice showing in the Olympics get Filip back in the NBA? That and more coming up in just a second. All right, folks, segment 3, still Andy Patton, still Locked On Zags podcast, moving away from talking about the 2025 recruiting class, Gonzaga's latest target, Kingston Flemings from San Antonio, Texas, to talk Olympics and Summer League basketball to close out the show. Feels like a daily topic at this point on Locked On Zags, but hey, it's the middle of the summer. We got a lot of Zags participating in the Olympics. We got a lot of Zags participating in Summer League, so we're going to keep you up to date on that stuff every single day here on the show. On Wednesday morning, there was a scrimmage between Team USA and Serbia in Abu Dhabi. Mark Few, of course, an assistant coach for Team USA as they get prepared for the Olympics, where they're hoping to win a gold medal. Serbia, of course, the main target for Serbia, the main name is Nikola Jokic. They also have Bogdan Bogdanovic and a handful of other NBA players on that roster. But for us, for our interest as a Zags podcast, Filip Petrusev is a member of that Serbian national team roster as well. And Petrusev is not only a member of the roster, he started for Serbia and played 24 minutes, which was the fourth most on the team in a 105-79 loss to the United States. The big story here is that the U.S. finally just obliterated an opponent. They kind of let Canada hang around for a while. They let Australia hang around for a while. Then they went out and just blew the doors right off of this team, of this Serbian national team roster. The other story, again, from our perspective, Filip Petrusev was great. He was great in this game. 11 points, 5 of 7 shooting, 3 steals, 2 boards, 2 assists. He had a significantly higher plus minus than Nikola Jokic. Jokic really struggled in this game. 6 of 19 shooting for Jokic. He did not look good. The plus minus being much better for Petrusev than Jokic means nothing, because single game plus minus data is very irrelevant and shouldn't be utilized. I wanted to throw it in there because it's a little fun to look at a box score and be like, wow, Filip Petrusev was far more impactful to his team winning than Nikola Jokic. That's not something we would have had on the bingo card necessarily, but I think it's probably a testament to how Team USA defended Nikola Jokic versus how they did or did not defend Filip Petrusev. Again, 5 of 7, very smooth from him in this game. Worth pointing out, Petrusev has been good for Serbia throughout this kind of friendly scrimmage process as they get prepared for the Olympics. He had 17 points on 8 of 12 shooting against Australia in a scrimmage there, very comfortable playing against that St. Mary's squad over there, going up against Jock Landale. So that means that through these 2 scrimmage games for Team Serbia, Filip Petrusev is 12 of 15 on 2-point shots. 12 of 15 from inside the arc. He's 1 of 4 from 3, so not great there, but it's only 4 3-point attempts, but 12 of 15 inside the arc. So the question becomes, when you look at the players representing their countries from Gonzaga in the Olympics, Rui Hachimura is safe and secure as a member of the Los Angeles Lakers. If he gets traded, he gets traded to a team that's going to play him. Rui has nothing to prove for Team Japan in the Olympics. You look at the Canada roster. Killian's been a 10, 12-year NBA veteran. Well, I think 11 years technically as an NBA veteran. He's safe and secure. He is in a perfectly fine spot, happy in Toronto, has had a lengthy, productive, prolific career as an NBA player. Andrew Nembhard just had a outstanding Eastern Conference playoffs performance against the Boston Celtics in the semifinals, in the Eastern Conference finals. He looked excellent. He has secured himself as a budding star in the NBA and a very, very talented guard at that level. None of them have anything they need to prove from an NBA perspective in the Olympic Games. Filip Petrusev, however, is in a different situation. Petrusev was drafted after he played at Gonzaga for 2 years, went back to Serbia, played for Mega BMAX, was an MVP in that level, then got drafted by the Philadelphia 76ers, 51st in the NBA draft, spent a few more years overseas, finally came to the United States, played 1 game in Philadelphia, got traded to Sacramento, played 1 game for Sacramento, got cut from the Kings, and went back to Europe. If Petrusev's goal is to get back to the NBA, and I don't know, maybe he's burned on it. Maybe he said, you know what, I'm just going to focus on my professional career overseas. I don't know what his goals are. He's obviously not in summer league right now, but that is because he is playing with Serbia and the national team. So that doesn't really mean anything from that perspective. Petrusev went back and played for Olympiacos last year, one of the top teams, one of the top non-NBA teams on the entire planet. He averaged 9 points, 4 boards, shot 79% on 2-pointers. He is an extremely efficient scorer around the rim. 9 points, 4 boards in 11 games. The team went 10-1. Those numbers aren't going to blow you away, but they're quality, productive numbers for a very good team. The question now, what does Filip Petrusev need to do to potentially use the Olympics to convince NBA teams to sign him? I don't know how often this happens. Obviously, the Olympics only happen every 4 years. And it's only been relatively recently in the grand scheme of things that we have seen a lot of international players in the Olympics, or excuse me, in the NBA. So we haven't seen a lot of opportunities where teams play in the Olympics and players play well enough to then get signed to NBA teams. There's only been probably 4 or 5 Olympics where that's realistically something that could have happened. Maybe a little bit more than that, maybe 6 or 7 Olympics, but not ultimately all that many where this has been a realistic option. So that is the question. Teams obviously know that Filip Petrusev is an NBA prospect. They know he got selected. They know he's played in summer league. Like, it's not like he's a complete unknown. If he goes out there, starts, plays 25 minutes a game for Serbia, has big games against Team USA, against Canada, against France, against Japan, Serbia, or against Australia, like those types of teams, plays well against NBA talent. If he's out there cooking Jock Landale, if he's out there cooking Kelly Olynyk, Dwight Powell from Canada, if he's out there cooking Josh Hawkinson and Rui Hachimura from Japan, Hawkinson's not an NBA player, but if he's out there cooking those types of guys, I don't think he's going to go out there and like just score, 22 points on Victor Wembanyama or Anthony Davis. That's a little bit unrealistic. But if he's playing well against NBA caliber players, teams are going to have to notice that, right? Like, you have to pay attention to that, and it has to change, maybe make you consider, hey, should we sign this guy? Again, I don't know if Petrusev's interested. I don't know his exact contract situation either, if he's locked into a deal with Olympiacos going forward, if he's a free agent after this. I'm not sure his situation, but if an NBA team watches him and he cooks their guy, or he looks good, he looks, comparable to those players, and they think, hey, we got a spot, or we at least got some training camp, we should bring him into training camp. Like, I could see that happening. I don't know that means that these Olympics mean more to him than they mean to anybody else. Everybody wants to represent their country. Everybody wants to win a medal. Serbia has an opportunity, sort of an outside shot. It's going to depend a lot on Jokic, but they have a shot to medal in these Olympics. And Petrusev would love, more than anything else, I'm sure, to help this country medal. But at the same time, you do enough in these Olympics over the next couple of weeks to prove you deserve a spot on the NBA roster, and that leads to you getting signed. That's an incredible outcome for him. An outcome that was probably less likely in the summer league, where there's so many guys trying to do the same thing, and you're not on nearly as big of a stage. So that's something I'm very fascinated about. There's a lot of things I'm excited about watching with these Olympics, but one of them is whether Petrusev can parlay this Olympic performance into potentially getting an NBA contract next year. Really quickly going to go through the summer league stuff here. We'll talk more about this on Friday's show. Anton Watson led the Celtics with 15 points on Tuesday in his summer league game. He had 5 boards, 2 assists, 2 steals, and a block in 23 minutes. Went 3 of 9 from 3. I love it. I love it. They told him, we need you to shoot more threes. He took 9 3-point attempts in a game. He only made 3 of them. That's 33%. That's fine. You want him to be a little better than that, but I love that he's taking all these shots. That is fantastic. That's exactly what he needs to be doing. Killian Tillie, best game yet. Played 20 minutes, 11 points, 4 of 5 shooting, 2 of 3 from 3, 1 of 2 from the free throw line. He had a pair of boards and a pair of blocks as well. Keep shooting, young man. Would love to say. I hate that they're kind of competing for a spot. Anton has the advantage having been selected, but Killian Tillie is trying out for every NBA team right now. And the better he does, the more likely that helps him land a spot, at least in training camp next month. Timme had 9 points in 22 minutes for the Kings. He did hit a 3-pointer, 1 of 3 from distance. The three he hit was early in the game, looked good for him to be able to get that done. He also had 3 boards, a block, and a steal. And like I mentioned, Julian Strawther shut down, no longer participating in Summer League. He averaged 28.5 points a game. He had 25 in game 1, 32 in game 2. Denver saw all they needed to see. They said, we're good. We don't want you to get hurt. He already was dealing with a nagging ankle injury. There was no reason to keep him out there. They wanted to see if he could be featured in an on-ball role more going into the season. He proved pretty definitively that he can, and they said, all right, that's good. I'm excited to see the role that Julian Strawther is going to have for Denver next year, because I can promise you it's going to be bigger than the role he had this past season as a rookie. It's going to wrap it up for me today here on the Locked On Zags podcast. We'll be back on Friday with the show we plan to do for today before getting the recruiting update on Kingston Flemings. So take a look for that show coming out on Friday morning. And then have a fantastic weekend. And we'll be back next week continuing to talk Zags, continuing to talk recruiting, continuing to talk Olympics, Summer League, all that good stuff. Thanks again for listening, folks. And until next time, as always, go Zags.